He enrolled in university with the profits he gained by redesigning a game called Reach for the Top, focused from science and technology-related fields in consultancy to developing of wireless technology, $1 billion in market share. However, this is where the downfall of the story begins, and the downfall of Mike and RIM as a whole. Despite the popularity of the iPhone, Mike and RIM were quite comfortable. Being slow adaptation was a result of Mike's inability and comfortability. Is it possible for a $68 billion company to lose its market share by over 60% in 2 years? This is the journey of Mike Lazarus. Mike spent majority of his childhood where he was born in Turkey. However, by age 5, Mike and his parents decided that he needed a change and to pursue better opportunities. So they decided to move to Canada, where Mike would spend majority of his life with. At a young age, Mike was fascinated by technology, where he spent hours and hours of time in the basement designing and building rockets and ham radios. During this period is where Mike gained a great desire and love for engineering and science, where in the future he would excel in particularly really well because of his overall fascination of its inner working. At age 12, Mike was already a prodigy, where he was excelling in science-related subjects. And this is the time where Mike started to think about college, where he started doing several courses in science. And while doing these several courses in science, he was preparing himself and his portfolio college. But it was during this time is where he would have an unexpected turn of events, which would lead to his life changing completely. He enrolled in university with the profits he gained by redesigning a game called Reach for the Top. This is where Mike's entrepreneurial spirit and mindset was developed. As you can see, it was developed at a young age of just 15, which is where he redesigned the game. So once it was in college where Mike met Doug and his childhood friend, where they decided to start up a company. The company would be named Research in Motion, in other words, RIM. RIM would be an organization that would specialize in consulting businesses in science and technology related fields. Now, they were quite successful for a short period of time. However, Mike decided that the company needed to move in a different direction. So just 1 year later, the company decided to shift its focus from science and technology related fields in consultancy to developing of wireless technology and transmission of data to, in other senses, text and email. So it was during this time where the company BlackBerry Limited was started. And during this time, as they were teenagers in college, they were awarded a $600,000 contract from General Motors. $600,000, life-changing money. But not for Mike. Mike decided that the company needed to grow more and faster. So just 5 years later, RIM turned into a small independent organization with just 10 people to a large multinational organization with thousands of workers and over $68 billion in market share. However, this is where the downfall of the story begins, and the downfall of Mike and RIM as a whole. In 2007, despite being in such a comfortable position, this is where Apple and Samsung decided to launch the smartphone. In other sense, the iPhone. This is where it was built. And during this time, Mike and RIM were very reluctant on doing any changes. Despite the popularity of the iPhone, Mike and RIM were quite comfortable and confident in their own product, and they were reluctant to change based on new trends. This resulted in disaster, where in 2011, their market share, which they were controlling close to 80% of the time, had shifted towards Apple and Samsung, where they went from a $68 billion sales company in 2007 to just $20 billion in 2011. This was a massive drop for RIM and Mike as a whole. In 2012, despite Mike's reluctancy, Samsung and Apple were controlling nearly 60% of the market, with RIM basically having control of only 40%. And that 40% was mainly to overseas market. In the North American market, their entire market share completely collapsed, from owning nearly 80% of stock to nearly only 20%. This is where things decided to change, and Mike decided he needed a change. And he got the wake-up call he deserved. So he made the announcement of the new Superphone. But despite that announcement, it was too little too late. Customers had already shifted, and they decided they were happy with what they were getting. And that's where the sad reality came to true, because RIM's market share plummeted by over 55%. And during this time, when it plummeted by over 55%, the shareholders demanded a new change and a new regime. This is where there was pressure put on Mike to resign. Mike had to give in to the pressure. Just a few months later, Mike tendered his resignation and announced his retirement towards the end of 2012. As entrepreneurs, you all must be wondering what you all could take out of this. Well, the sad reality is, despite Mike's early promise of having great entrepreneurial spirit and being a great and important innovator in the tech industry, Mike failed due to 3 specific reasons. 1, being innovation stagnation. 2, being lack of consumer focus. And 3, the main reason is because of slow adaptation. Now, being slow adaptation was a result of Mike's inability and comfortability in the position that RIM was at, or BlackBerry was at the time, which resulted in market trends and industry trends moving ahead and him being left behind. So the overall lesson entrepreneurs can take from this is that despite the comfortable position you're at, you should never be happy and satisfied with one thing. Continue to research and continue to evolve. If not, you'll be left behind, just like Mike. The purpose of this video is to inspire the future tech entrepreneurs by providing them with the necessary information and know-how on how to make their dreams and aspirations come true. Stay tuned for the next series of videos. Thank you.